Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Great to be with you on the show today. It's Children's Day at the Central Pennsylvania Festival of the Arts. And actually, I did Sirius Big Ten Radio this morning. Yeah, and they asked about the team. But the first thing we talked about actually was, I guess Kyle Crooks had been on the show before I was on. He's the new voice of Nebraska. And, of course, he's replacing or stepping into the job that Greg Sharp had. And Greg, of course, passed away in the wintertime. And Greg was just 61 years old. And it is Kyle will do a great job. Young guy, but he'll do a great job in Nebraska. You don't go into the job. I mean, if anybody can speak to this, obviously I can. You do not go into the job that you're there replacing somebody. You don't do that.
No.
I never one time did I think I was replacing Fran Fisher. The only one Fran Fisher, right? The whole thing was to go out and do the best job I could and be, the best me. If people liked it, great. If they didn't like it, okay, sorry. It's like, but you can't go into it. Like, because he's been interviewed about this, about about replacing Greg and what it means. It's like, hey guys, okay, Greg was beloved, no question, but Kyle has the job through circumstances that nobody had any control over, most especially Greg. So he's talking about that he's saying that the hardest part of the job is because of how beloved Greg was. Hey guys, just be you. Right. Again, I never one time thought about that I was replacing a legend. Never. To me, it was like, okay, the clock's starting. It's my turn now. Now, whether people like you or not, I mean, we can't all be beloved like you.
That's right.
I mean, except for one dog.
Well, yeah, that, and then that turned a few fans against me. But yeah, that happens.
Yeah, but you won them back. See, that's the beauty.
That's the beauty part. Won them back.
Yeah, which is great. Beloved figures such as yourself. Yeah. I come in here every time you're on and just feel completely overshadowed. What? So, but yeah, so it was interesting because they were talking. That's one of the first things they talked to me about, and I said, "Nah." I said he'll be great. He says, "It just has to be the best Tim. He can't think about." Now, I mean, in the first game, and I don't know what Nebraska's first game is. Is he going to have to recognize the greatness of the man that whose seat he now occupies? Yeah, of course he will. But after that, you can't be sitting there chasing something else. You've got to go out there and do the job. You have to do the job. Well, so here we are at that time of the year where baseball at least dominates some. I think it really dominates most, I would think. And there's some good baseball going on right now. You know what's interesting is they did a survey of the players informally about robo-umps. Players don't want them.
Huh.
Now, have the players had complaints about strike zones?
Of course.
Yes. Have the players had complaints about strike zones in the 1920s? Yes. I mean, you know how many games Babe Ruth got tossed out of?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Babe Ruth as both a pitcher and as a position player, got thrown out of games. One of the more famous ones was that he, on the first batter of the game, I can't remember how the batter reached base. I don't know if it was a walk or something like that. And Ruth freaked out. He got tossed. So Ernie Shore comes down out of the bullpen, picks off the runner at first, retires the next 26 guys. Now, for a long time, it was recognized as a perfect game, but then a few years ago, they started changing all the rules as to what they think is a perfect game and what isn't and so forth. And so it was taken out of the book. Just like Harvey Haddock's.
Yeah. Huh.
Okay, boom, out of the book. The guy pitched 12 perfect innings. 36 up, 36 down. Okay?
And it's like the modern day Pirates. They couldn't score.
And, yeah, they lost 1-0 because finally I think Hank Aaron reached base. And then Adcock homered. But why was it 1-0? Because when Adcock homered, he passed Aaron on the bases. Like, oops. Yeah. So, but the Pirates can't score. They went to Seattle and they scored 0.
0 runs.
Yeah, that's kind of a low number. I'm no expert, but it seems like a low number to me. But they've done some good things in the first half. The question is going to be, and we know what the answer is. The answer is no. But do they want to build around some of the guys that they have, most especially Paul Skeens? And there's no way.
No.
There's no way. And that's sad.
Yeah,
and it's one
I
thing.
agree.
It's one thing to sit there. Okay, let's take the Phillies. Now, the Phillies have plenty of money, great TV deal locally, makes a big deal, right? And they've spent it. They've extended Zach Wheeler, they've extended Aaron Nola, they've got Bryce Harper on a long-term contract. Castellanos is making some coin. Trey Turner had an 11-year deal.
Yeah,
11-year deal. JT Realmuto has a deal. And they've added around those guys, but they've spent money on some big names.
Mm-hmm.
And look, they're fighting tooth and nail to beat out the Mets, and they want to win the World Series. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, you feel like the Pirates aren't even trying to get to the playoffs. And that's an issue. It's one thing if they had this incredibly rich farm system, which they don't.
No.
And they're calling these guys up, and they're all growing together and so forth. I mean, no, it didn't help that Jared Jones got hurt. I mean, that unfortunately that happens. But for example, you take let's take a team that's playing well right now, the Red Sox. They started out the year with Christian Campbell, then they did move him back down to the minors. But they brought up Marcelo Meyer. They brought up Roman Anthony, and Anthony got off to a slow start. He was hitting 114 at one point. And guess what? He's not hitting 114 anymore. He's up about 260 now. I mean, he's rolling at this point, and they're winning. They're winning with their young players. And that's, you would like to see the Pirates do something of the same, but the difference is, I mean, the Red Sox did spend some money. They're getting Alex Bregman back. There's no Alex Bregman on this team. No. Now, it also cost $40 million to get him. I mean, I think if you walked up to Bob Nutting and said, hey, we're going to pay $40 million per year for Alex Bregman, they'd have to call the paramedics to revive him. Well, we can't do that. We can't do that. But it does go back to what I talked about yesterday. Is there a point where we're at the limit on money?
You're not reaching that point yet. I can tell you that. I don't think there's any doubt that people are freely spending. Where will that point be? I don't know. Because to me in sports right now, I think it's the opposite. I think they're right now, at least for the next I'd say at least 5 years, there's not a point. I think they're going to continue to spend in every sport, and if it sets you back, so be it. I think that's it's gotten to the point where it's so competitive, and there's so many avenues that come together, really, that...
Yeah, but one avenue's missing now. These regional sports networks where they thought that was the cash cow?
No, you're not getting that anymore.
Okay, that's... If they still had that as a reliable source of money... Yeah. Okay, well, I can see that.
No, the other part of it is attendance. A lot of these ballparks aren't selling out, and some of those are good teams that aren't selling out. That's another big part of it. Now, attendance is good for a lot of the big teams for the most part, but I think all of the intangibles that come together, it's tangible because you're seeing it clear as day, but obviously you're paying Bryce Harper $300+ million for a couple reasons. Yeah. One, you absolutely want him to produce on the field. That's the obvious. But the other part, what's his jersey sales going to be? How many fans are going to buy season tickets because of him? Right. All of those things coming together are why you're paying the big money. It's why the Dodgers shelled out the money they shelled out for Betts and Ohtani's and Freeman. So that's a big reason why these contracts are out of hand and out of control. And for now, I think you're going to continue to see that in sports. I don't think you're going to see those contracts slow down any because of the competition that you have. If you're not willing to pay your top star top money, somebody else is going to do it. And that's where I think the competition just comes in so much that, I don't think it's, to me right now at least, the cash flow is not stopping for a couple of years. I would say at least next 5 to 10 years, I don't see it slowing down. Even if the economy is saying otherwise, in the world of sports, we've seen it differently. We've seen it with fans scaling back for sure. But these teams, some of them are freely paying the luxury taxes, no problem. They don't want to. Some of them don't want to do it. Other ones, hey, if it wins us a World Series, so be it.
Well, I mean, because the NFL's, quietly talking about maybe
absolutely
opening up their negotiations again. Now, the Big 12's having its media day. I know that you were shocked, as we all were, when Brett Yormark said that I prefer 5 plus 11 for the 16-team playoff. Shocked, I tell you. Now, as the commissioner of the Big 12, he has to say that.
Sure.
Okay. And I think he believes it. Yeah. He also knows that the untenable position that they're in. Last year, if they had a 16-team playoff and it was 5 plus 11, how many teams in the Big 12 would have made it? One. The automatic bid, Arizona State. Nobody else would have made it.
Right.
Iowa State fell out. The ACC would have picked up one. They'd have had 3 because Miami
would have been in. Yep.
Right. So Miami would have been able to get in. The SEC would have had 6. The Big Ten would have stayed at 4 because there was nobody else in the top 16 from the Big Ten after Indiana. Now, what Tony Petitti, I think, wants to do, and what I've read about what he wants to do, because Tony doesn't do a lot of interviews.
No.
Okay. Now, he'll have to do the press conference in Las Vegas. He will have to do that. And is that he wants to take, instead of having 1 play 2, like Penn State and Oregon played, and it's the first time they've gone 1 through 18, no divisions. So Penn State and Oregon were the first 2 teams to do it where there was a first and a second playing each other. Okay? Everybody knew going into that game that both teams were in the playoff. I think everybody knew going into the game the winner was going to the Rose Bowl, which meant they would get a first-round bye. And there was a really good chance that the team that didn't win the game was going to get a home game. Okay. And what he wants to do, and again, this is about TV, this is about inventory, is that he wants the 4 automatic bids to the college football playoff, which means the top 2 teams they're in. Right. And in all likelihood, the team that finishes in first in the Big Ten will be one of the 4 teams. It could possibly be one of the 2 teams that might get a bye, because they're talking about having 14 play the first round and not all 16. Right? That does reduce 1 game at the front. For the television partners, that's a little easier. All right. Now, he wants 3 to play 6, and he wants 4 to play 5. Now, what are you guaranteed? You are guaranteed, unless it's a really crazy year, that among the teams that would be playing in that 3, 6, 4, 5, at minimum you're going to have, I think, two of them between Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon. Your 4 highest rated, TV rated properties. So you're guaranteed, I think, 2 of them.
2 at least, yep. I agree.
Right? 2 of them. And that is... And for them, that's ratings gold, because technically those are playoff games. You're trying to play your way into the playoff, trying to get those automatic bids. And the question would be, do you play those games at home sites? Do you play one in Indianapolis? Do you play one in Lambeau? Do you play one of them in Detroit? Do you play one of them in Minneapolis? I mean, or do you have them go as home games? And that's what's interesting about his proposal's interesting. It does not mean in any way, shape, or form that you have to sit there and agree with it, but you have to at least give him credit for thinking outside the box. Right? And that's what we don't have a lot of these days. There's very little thinking outside the box. Tony, at least, is thinking outside the box. And it's something that, for example, Jim Phillips had talked about with the ACC, that he did not want 1 versus 2. Because they're both going to make it. I mean, both SMU and Clemson made it last year, in part because Clemson won. If Clemson lost, they weren't going to make it.
Right.
And that's why they ended up being the 12 seed. So that's at least the ability to think outside the box. 5 plus 11 is not thinking outside the box. Now, it doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, I think 5 plus 11's merit.
Sure.
And people would ask the question, okay, if you do 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, okay, then do you need to play a non-conference schedule? Because 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 is all based on your conference record, 9. And I say, yes, you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just take this particular year. Let's just say Ohio State in this particular year, and they've got the playoff in place. 3, 6, 4, 5. Say Ohio State finishes third. Okay. But they beat Texas. But they lose this game. They get in as an at-large because they won that game.
Absolutely. I agree.
Right. So the non-conference still figures into it because you still need to have a little collateral built up in the bank. Something I can tell by the way you dress that you know all about.
That's right.
I got to give you credit.
It's just the magician ends up coming in and makes it disappear somehow. But other than that,
yeah, you're kind of like the undercover CEO. That's how I view you.
That's right.
Yeah, you dress down.
Yeah, no briefcase.
Nobody knows who you are.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like, that's you.
That's right.
Yeah. Kind of, management by walking around.
That's right.
I mean, you're actually the owner of the station.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't brag about it. But that's thinking outside the box, though.
Sure.
And that's why you would still need non-con. What happens if Iowa plays Ohio State? Ohio State's a 3. During the regular season, they've lost to either Penn State or Michigan, all right, which puts them in the 3 spot. May have lost to both to put them in the 3 spot. You're like, okay, where are they? And they lose this game. Iowa puts together I feel a lot saying it's the greatest offensive performance.
That would be 14 points.
Okay. Iowa puts together this great game.
Yeah.
This great game, and they beat them. Iowa gets in. This is one of the automatics. You still have a couple of at-large bids available in this, in the 4-4-2-2-1-1. There's still 2 at-large bids. Ohio State, because, say, they had beaten Texas earlier in the year, so we're going to take this particular year. Okay. And they win the game. That might be enough on the data points to get them in. So you still need your non-conference. You still need it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you also, from a perspective of not only from Ohio State, where you're playing Texas week 1, that's obviously going to make you a lot better, but those tune-up games kind of help, too, in the beginning. There's no doubt about that. I think when it's we just talked about it yesterday with the NFL not really having much of a preseason anymore, just how much rust is on these teams.
Oh.
But for teams to play those very, very, very winnable games that, as James Franklin says, they're very more important, especially when you lose them, that I think they help a ton. I think they get you a lot more game ready. They get you in game shape. They get you in game speed. So I think those 2 or 3 games help a lot too.
Right. Look, and this is it's interesting about Penn State, Nevada, Florida International, Villanova. Okay. Completely understand it.
Yeah.
But, okay, as James Franklin says, okay, he says, you may not think Nevada's a big game, but suddenly I know where if you lose it, it is a big game.
Very big game.
It's huge. But these are all interesting proposals. And, of course, the ACC will come out, and they will also talk about they think it should be 5 plus 11. If I'm the ACC and the Big 12, I am screaming to the 100%. Hills about 5 plus 11.
100%.
All right. Now,
the Pac-2 is doing the same thing.
Yeah, but they don't qualify for this.
Exactly.
Okay? This year they do.
Mm-hmm.
Next year they don't.
No.
They'll be a group of 6 conference. And that's what, to be honest with you, that's what based on their membership. They should be. As I've said many times, I give the Pac-12, the Big 12, credit for survival. Because when Texas and Oklahoma left, many thought the Big 12 was left for dead. Right? When USC, UCLA, and then eventually Washington and Oregon left, the Pac-12 was given up for dead. They are still alive. So I give both those conferences credit, an A+ for survival, but I also give them a C- for membership.
Yep.
You survived, okay? But who'd you survive with?
That's true.
And so, I mean, let's take the Big 12, for example. Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, and to a point, BYU, were playing, they were a group of 5 teams. Now they're considered to be Power 4 teams because they're all in the Big 12. Now, they made the conference better. We can debate that. Basketball-wise, Houston's made it better.
Absolutely.
I mean, and BYU, they allegedly spent $35 to $40 million on their basketball roster during the wide-open free period up till June 30th. I mean, I think BYU's made the basketball conference better. But have they made the football conference better? I mean, are the okay? So Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah. What's better, that grouping or Texas and Oklahoma?
Yeah. Not even close.
The Pac, whatever number you want to give it this week. USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon. Hey, they've got Boise State, San Diego State, Utah State. I mean, they're fine. They're good programs. I mean, like I said, I'll watch some of that, some of those games during the season because I just like, watching games. But is the conference better? Of course it isn't. None of those teams are in the same league with the ones that were replaced.
No.
None. Is the ACC better for adding Cal and Stanford?
No.
My goodness. Believe it or not, they're actually a little bit better for adding SMU. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're a little bit better for adding SMU. But Cal and Stanford? You got to be kidding me. And if I heard one more person say, look what Stanford does in the Learfield Cup. Well, when you sit down with TV networks and you start negotiating, do you sit there and go, hey, we added Stanford in the Learfield Cup? And you know what the first question going to be is? Are they any good at football? I was going
to say, there's going to be a lot of people say, what's the Learfield Cup, honestly? And it's as big as the Directors' Cup can be. No, they're not going to care.
It's big to athletic directors.
Well, sure it is, and I get that because that tells you how much you're building your programs. But no, it's not big to TV. It's not big to. With all due respect to water polo, they're not bringing in the revenue. I mean, that's not.
A TV executive is sitting there going, "Really? Are they any good at football?"
Exactly.
Right. And we're also going to.
Or basketball. One of the two.
Right. Yeah, all right. Well, they may not be great in football, but they're decent in basketball. Yeah. Okay, that might help.
Yeah.
That's all they care about.
That's literally, yeah.
That's all they care about. Okay? All right. The big news, of course, on campus was the hockey. And, let's face it.
Oh.
To have on national TV, McKenna makes his announcement. Now, I guess for Michigan State, this is a big blow.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
Because not only that, but one of their top players ended up saying, oh, the heck with this, I'm going to go to the Edmonton Oilers organization. So it was not a good day.
No.
For them.
Not for Sporty.
No. but Penn State's been on a roll.
Absolutely.
14th overall pick in the draft. The potential first overall pick in next year's draft. Now he's going to have to go out and play.
Sure.
You know? But I did see one highlight of him, you know, and as I talk about highlights all the time, you know, it's like, okay, they always show you the best. That's why they're called highlights.
Sure.
But it was a shorthanded goal he scored for Medicine Hat. I'm like, oh, holy mackerel. I mean, this dude's got moves.
Yep. He got some moves, absolutely.
But what a great time for the hockey program.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got that lefty. There's something about that lefty style that just has the ability to have the moves. You've obviously saw it with Gretzky for so many years. You've seen it with Crosby.
Yep.
And now, you know, you hope you're going to see it with McKenna as well.
Yeah. So, but let him be him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's
no next this and this and this.
I realize
I agree.
that it is natural for people to have expectations.
Certainly.
But just let him settle into who he is.
Yep. Okay. We've always said the term legacy is overused. They'll give you another term that is overused quite a bit: generational talent. That is something that has certainly been overused year in and year out. Does it happen sometimes? Sure, it does. But let him be him. I fully agree. I think he'll be great, and the expectation and obviously the hype surrounding the program now is incredible for the offseason they've had, which has been best offseason they've had, and obviously in the history of the short program they've had.
Well, let's give Guy Godowski credit because what he had to do was he had to start the college version of an expansion team without the expansion draft.
Yeah,
okay?
Sure.
So he had to start an expansion team without an expansion draft, which means he had to start from square one, from scratch. And look what they've done to get it to this point. It's been remarkable. Now, expectations. Okay. The guy I'm about to say I thought had an excellent career here. An excellent career. But Mark Hall came in to wrestle with the idea he was going to win 4 national titles.
Right.
Now, it's hard to win one.
Right.
And Mark won one. But it's hard.
Yep.
So, did Mark Hall leave Penn State with fans being, quote, somewhat disappointed that he won 1 as opposed to 4? Because remember the hype coming in.
Yeah, sure. That's the hype for almost anybody now with wrestling.
But the hype coming in was, I mean, what did he win? 6 state titles in Minnesota?
Mm-hmm.
The hype coming in was, wow. And he still had an excellent career.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to give some perspective on that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I go back to something I was asked this morning about how people feel about James. I was talking about the quarterback club, and he's beloved there because he is. And if you're around James for 5 minutes, he's a great guy. I mean, but I said, look, and I said, people have expectations. I said, and James has managed the expectations. And I said, they said, and they asked about winning big games. And I said, look, he's won a Rose Bowl, 2 Fiesta Bowls, a Cotton Bowl. He's been to the Big Ten championship game twice. He won one of them. He got to the semifinals of the college football playoff. He said he's won a lot of big games. I said, remember, history is one of our greatest teachers. Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys. Okay? And this is because I grew up in this era. The story over and over again was he can't win the big game. They lost those 2 title games to Green Bay. Then they had some early exits in the playoffs. Couldn't win the big game. Then he won Super Bowl 6. Then eventually won 12. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Absolutely.
Okay? John Madden it got to the point over and over and over. He can't win the big game. Well, what's the big game he couldn't win? He couldn't beat the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, right.
And finally, with both Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier out of the lineup, remember they got hurt against Baltimore. Okay? They finally beat him, got to the Super Bowl, and beat the Vikings.
Yeah.
Well, nobody talked about John Madden not winning the big game anymore. He parlayed it into a legendary TV career. Okay? There's been a long list of people over time where they were told over and over again, can't win the big one, can't win the big one. Okay. Then you win it.
Yeah. Also, for the longest time, had the highest winning percentage of any coach.
Yeah. Exactly. Can't win the big game. All right. This goes back to the beginning of time.
Sure. Tony Dungy for how long? Couldn't win.
Can't win the big game.
Couldn't win.
All right. Yeah,
he leaves Tampa, they win a Super Bowl. Proves it even more.
Yeah.
Then goes to Indianapolis.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy Reid.
Can't win. Andy Reid can't win the big game. Right? Yeah, no, Philadelphia couldn't win the big game. Okay, well, guess what? Andy Reid's won 3 of those now. He's pretty good.
Been to 6.
Right, he's pretty good. But that's, and so I try to explain that. I said, history is a great teacher on that. I said, you just need to break through. I said, and Penn State got close to breaking through last year. And I explained to them on the show today, I said, look, I said they got that far last year and you got all these guys back. I said, but depth is the critical part to all this. I said, you can't negotiate a 16 or potentially 17 game season unless you have depth.
Right.
I said, you're going to get guys that are bumped up. You're going to get guys that have to miss a game or two, or unfortunately, you're going to have somebody that's going to miss the season.
Significant time, yep.
Yeah, significant time. And I said, you have to be able to somehow get through that and negotiate that part of the season. You need to. It's the only way you're going to get to the point that you're at. I said, now it's something that you look at last year's Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and Ohio State. Depth meant everything because they all had to negotiate something during the course of the year. It's funny in the Big 12 media days, that was interesting, was that they're really talking up Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson's one of those guys, he's like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. What Sundance Kid? Like he'd be standing there and he'd shoot and he'd miss. He says, I'm better when I move. And he move, boom, and all of a sudden, he picks off everything. Okay? And that's Avery Johnson. He's not great when he's standing in the pocket and scanning, but boy, he starts moving, he makes plays. Well, why was Will Howard the quarterback at Ohio State last year? Because Avery Johnson beat him out.
Yeah, he got beat up the job.
That's what happened. Will Howard was beaten out by Avery Johnson for the job at Kansas State. And that's how he ended up at Ohio State. It wasn't like he said, hey, I need a bigger, better challenge, the whole thing. He was going to stay at Kansas State until he found out that, no, we're not going to stay at Kansas State because you're not going to be the starting quarterback. All right. Kansas State plays Iowa State in that Ireland game, which will be August the 23rd. And you see what the Pop-Tarts are doing?
No.
But I guess they're sending over 2 of the Pop-Tarts from the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Like Wild Berry, and I can't remember what the heck the other one is. All right. And they're being sent out, to Ireland. Now, publicity-wise, I mean, look, that's a game that people watch because you're anxious to see some meaningful football at that point.
Sure.
In the NFL preseason, there is no meaningful football at all. 0. And
In most cases, the starters don't even take snaps.
A lot of cases, some of the key reserves don't take
snaps. You're right.
I mean, come on. I mean, that's why the first month of the season is such a mess. You don't know. You don't know who's going to win the first month of the season. I think you pointed out yesterday the Eagles were 2-2 in September last year, trying to find themselves. Then
went into the bye week, and suddenly, boom, there it went.
Then they figured things out. Okay, that's great. They figured things out, and that's what you have to do. And now they want to go to 18 games. Now the negotiation on that is being. Thought they might negotiate this summer, or at least begin the process of it. But then they delayed it. And I'm sure for the NFL, as I pointed out yesterday, the galling fact, the NBA gets more money from ESPN than we do for Monday Night Football, which actually garners ratings in a Super Bowl. Because they're going to get a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
It's not this one, is it? Is it?
I think it's the next
one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey. And look, ESPN knows the value of it. They brought Joe Buck and Troy Aikman over. Okay? And now they're sitting there and the NBA is getting more money from ESPN. And part of this deal with the NFL that is incredibly important to ESPN is they get the rights to all the highlights. So all those shows they do, NFL Live, whatever show it happens to be, okay? They've got the rights to all of the highlights. And I think they pay $2.7 billion a year for it, and of that, I think $500 billion of it is, $500 million of the $2.7 billion is for the highlight packages. And the NFL sitting there going, there's something wrong here. Yeah. There's something wrong. So we need to renegotiate this. And ESPN's got to be sitting there. And do you have any idea what this new model is? They keep doing all these. I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't seen Lee Leonard in years. I don't know what they're doing.
No, I don't either.
I see the promos, but I don't know what it means.
I don't know what it meant either. They need something, that's for sure.
Yeah, they do need something. So, look. They spend a lot of money, but the NFL is king.
Oh, sure.
And they're paying more just based on the timing of the contracts. Okay?
Sure.
The NBA took advantage of the timing, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. And they got $7.6 billion between NBC, Prime Video, and ESPN. I think ESPN shares like $4 billion.
4 or 5. Yep.
4.5.
Yep.
They pay the NFL $2.7. Now I realize it's for one game a week, but they get more viewers in the one game a week than they do for how many regular season games in the NBA?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
No doubt.
Super Bowl?
Yep.
Oh, we got the NBA Finals. Super Bowl? What the NBA Finals, Game 7 draw this year? 11, 12 million?
Yeah, not as much.
Super Bowl had 100 million more than that plus. Crazy.
Yeah, they do get it 2027. NBC gets it this year. 2027 goes to ABC.
Okay, so Mike Tirico gets to do the Super Bowl with Collinsworth. It's going to be a lot of talking.
Yeah.
And Mike gets to say some of it.
Now, I was going to say, how much does Mike say? I was literally thinking the same thing. How much does Mike get out of this?
Yeah. Mike's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Have you met Mike?
I have. It's been years, but I was in school when I met Mike.
Okay. Mike, I've known Mike for a while now. And Mike's really, to me, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
I know there have been stories about what happened when he was at ESPN. I understand all that. I'm just talking about my interactions with him have been great.
Sure.
Right.
One of the great people I had the chance to meet, and a lot of people obviously mixed reviews about him, was Colin Cowherd. Twice came here.
I never met Cowherd.
Twice. He came here 2 times, and both times was great.
Well, he understands you're the undercover CEO.
That's what it might be. That's what it certainly might be. And he was still with ESPN at the time, and we were, I worked for an affiliate of ESPN at that time, and he was a great guy. He was here for Ohio State 05, I think, right before game day came, obviously, that time. And then he came, I think it was Ohio State again, 07, I think, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, he was here twice. He was definitely here twice. He was in the hub at least once. I think it was the second time.
Well, you know what I respect about him is that he has the ability, and it doesn't matter how you feel about it,
right?
His opinions. I could care less, because I felt the same way about Rush Limbaugh. Again, let's take all the opinions aside. Again, I'm talking this from a pure broadcasting point of view.
Yes.
Cowherd sits there for 3 hours and can carry the entire 3 hours himself without saying, breaking or anything. Rush Limbaugh could do the 3-hour show as a one-man band.
Yeah.
And had the ability to keep the show going the entire time and not break, not lose train of thought, not do not search to find something.
Yep.
Right. Again, take the opinions away.
Yeah. Howard Stern, same thing. Okay. Absolutely.
Right. Take the opinions away.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Hey, you can hate somebody because you don't like their opinion. I'm talking from a pure broadcasting point of view. Cowherd's brilliant at that.
The other thing they're brilliant at,
Rush was brilliant at that.
Rush. All three, and Howard in that conversation as well.
Yes.
The 3 things that they are phenomenal at and they've been great at through the years is a couple things that matter most. Interviews, incredible at them.
Yes.
Live reads, incredible at them. Right. Don't forget who's spending their hard-earned money to keep you on the air. That's exactly absolutely. They are. The 3 of them are about second. Dan Patrick I've got to throw in there as well.
Patrick does a great job.
It's second to none when it comes to that kind of stuff, which is as important as what comes out of your mouth with opinion.
Right. It's just the ability to make the presentation.
Right.
Again, don't be immature.
Right.
And say, I hate them because of their opinions. Right. So don't talk to me about Rush Limbaugh. No. Okay, I'm talking about from a pure ability of broadcasting and presentation. Colin Cowherd, Howard Stern.
Absolutely.
They're all different people from different walks as to what they do.
Absolutely.
Right?
They know their audience.
Right.
And know their advertisers.
And they go from there.
100%.
But they always could sit there and they could carry the whole thing by themselves.
Yeah.
And when it comes to interviews, they had the ability to ask questions.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Okay. Dan Patrick I would throw in there because to me his interviews.
Dan Patrick is excellent.
I learned a lot from him.
Dan Patrick is excellent.
Yeah, I think he is.
And he sits there with a confidence where he's not searching for something to talk about, and he's intimidated by no one.
No.
Right? No. In other words,
He went at it with David Stern at least twice.
Right. But he sat there and, but he asked thoughtful questions.
Absolutely. And
sometimes conversationally he'll do it too.
That I think is the biggest part. To me, I think a lot of people will prepare for interviews, and which is fine, but you could tell they're structured questions. You're not paying attention to what the answers are. I've seen that too many times. Dan Patrick casually asks perfect questions, listens to the answers because he follows up perfectly. Yep. And that's what I think one of the biggest things I learned from him over time was that. And that's just the ability to listen, stick to the who, what, where, when, why, how. All of those things he did so well.
Right, and that's why when I was teaching my broadcasting class, I said, let's talk about interviews. Mm-hmm. I said, how many of you, when you interview somebody, are already thinking about the next question? Right? No. Okay. And, of course, every hand goes up. I said, of course you are.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the interview and you're young. You want to do a good job. You want to ask the right questions, so the next question's there for you. I said, the key to doing an interview is listening.
Absolutely.
Just like the key to doing a play-by-play broadcast is listening. Mm-hmm. If I'm not listening to Jack Ham or Dick Girardi,
certainly,
two brilliant individuals, I'm hurting the entire broadcast and the audience by not listening.
Right.
So I can pick up on the themes that they're talking about and then go from there because they're so good at what they do. Same thing in an interview. You listen to the answers. I said, because over time you will get more comfortable. You'll become more relaxed. I said, then you'll start listening on the interview, and they may give a standard answer, and it's, okay, I'll just go straight to the next question.
Sure.
That's fine. I said, that's fine. You may do that 2 or 3 questions in a row. I said, and then they may give you an answer and say, whoa, scrap the next 3 questions. Let's follow up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't ever be afraid to say, the other thing I've learned too, now don't say it all the time, but don't ever be afraid to say, what do you mean by that? It doesn't make you any worse of an interviewer. It doesn't make you any worse of a broadcaster. If they make a statement that you don't understand, follow up with that.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's the audience gets more out of it when they're not just listeners, you're a listener.
Yeah.
Because they may say something that actually sparks a better conversation.
Sure.
And I know you're still waiting for me to say something that would spark a better conversation.
That's right.
Because you are, very quietly, the CEO.
The CEO, that's right.
Of the place. And I have to give you credit. By the way you dress.
That's right.
You hide it well.
Completely.
Wow. What are we doing here? Another one in the books.